So welcome to part 2 of the Read 536 Triangulated Analysis for the Common Core State Standards project explanation. So what I just want to do is spend a couple of minutes now just walking you through the sample template that I gave you and just kind of showing you what I explained in the first screencast. So what you need to do is look at your program and just choose, one unit. So I talked before about what one unit might consist of, and then you need to identify the California English Language Arts standards that are covered in that unit. So even if it's not specifically designed around our standards, which most of them that you probably use are, unless it's an intervention program, identify from our old framework which standards they're covering. So if you are looking at an intervention program, what you want to do is think about maybe what standards this program is prepping them for, like what is it filling in that they're missing, and it might be helpful for you to look at maybe the grade below what the students that you're working with or that you use the program for. Kind of, if you look at the grade below, maybe it gives you an idea of some of the standards that you're filling in for. So to show you my example, what I did was I went and I looked at this is a grade 3 unit 1 week 4. This is the Macmillan McGraw-Hill Treasures program. So I took a look at this week and I decided to focus on vocabulary. So I saw first, it's gonna keep following me. Can I get this off? No. Okay. So I saw here that for the vocabulary for this week, it gave me the words, and then it was focused on context clues and multiple meaning words. And then as I flipped through, looking for kind of how they taught the vocabulary, this particular manual that I have is not for the California standards. This is a national, an example of a national manual. So I couldn't really just go to the standards page and find what actual standards were covered because they're not in here. So I had to look through, and I looked at all the times they taught vocabulary to see what we were covering, and then I went to my California standards, and then you can actually get them right off the Crosswalks page if you like. But I went onto those to find out which standards are being addressed in this unit. So you're not going to, let's say you're doing vocabulary or you're doing comprehension, you're not doing, every single, make this a little smaller. It didn't really work out. You're not doing every single standard that's for that particular strand. You're going to look just at the ones that are being covered. So if I take a look here, I identified on my template, this is the sample that you have, that they were covering, when I looked at all the examples of how they taught vocabulary for that unit, for that week, they covered the California English Language Arts Standard for 3rd grade of 1.6, 1.8, and do I have any others? I don't think so. Okay, so those are the two that were covered. Now, what I wanted to do is I want to use the Crosswalks document to talk about how that standard is addressed in the Common Core. So you'll notice that I lifted this right off the Crosswalks page. So in terms of figuring out if the way the program lays out these lessons for vocabulary this week, if they're going to be Common Core ready or meet Common Core, I need to figure out what that Common Core standard is. So it's standard 4 for 3rd grade, and it's using sentence level context as a clue to the word meaning or meaning of the word or phrase, and then determining the meaning of a new word, or knowing that the meaning changes when an affix is added to the word. So there's alignment between these two standards, and you can get that off the Crosswalks document, but then you also need to be aware of kind of how it's being addressed or how it's being taught in the program to make sure that you feel it would meet this standard. So yes, there's technically alignment, but you really then need to go into the program and look at how they teach it. So one of the things on the crosswalk document is that they say it includes derivational and Latin suffixes, the new standard, right? So our old standard doesn't necessarily cover those specifically, and so I wrote that so under my implications piece. So I wrote the California English Language Arts Standards focus on many prefixes and suffixes in grade 3, but in the Common Core, it really requires this additional focus on specifically derivational and Latin suffixes, the meaning of these, and then how they influence word meaning. And so I just put an example of what the derivational suffixes are, things like ish, hood, ness, ism, ist, and then the Latin suffixes, such as able, ants, So all of these need to be a focus. So what I did was then I went back into my program and I said, well, did it cover it in this lesson since I am working on this standard? And how does it cover it, or how do I need to do this? So then what I did was I took some notes for myself. So this notes column is going to be really helpful to you later on when we're doing the next part of the assignment, which is making your own curriculum. So since you're looking at this now and you're analyzing it, you might as well take some notes for yourself as to what you were thinking about when you were doing this Common Core analysis, because the program that you write for the end of our course, or the unit that you come up with, is going to be based on the Common Core state standards. So I noted to myself as I was looking, I really went through each lesson they did on vocabulary throughout this particular week in this first unit. And so I wrote down that the program used context clue strategies to help students determine the meanings of the multiple meaning words in the selection. And then I put some notes to myself that on page 102 and 111D, suffixes are taught using words other than the selection vocabulary. And so, these mini lessons and discussions could easily focus on the selection vocabulary rather than introducing different words and incorporate the derivational and the Latin suffixes. So I noticed, let's go and look at that page. Do I need 102? All right, hold on. It's just one at a time here. Okay. So here, they did go into, can I move this up? Okay. Suffixes, right? So later on, when I write up my analysis of this program and how I feel it is or is not Common Core ready, what I wrote in those notes are something I would include in my analysis. So I noted that I need to cover the derivational or the Latin suffixes in order to help meet the Common Core state standard, because that was not something that was a particular focus in the California ELA standards. And then I noted to myself that they started going on with this word teach, and reader and singer, and I thought to myself, well, that's kind of silly. If I need to teach these derivational and Latin suffixes to meet the Common Core, why would I do this in the program? Why wouldn't I just go ahead and use the words that I'm using as my selection vocabulary and do the suffixes piece with that? So that was kind of a note to myself. It was very easy to use the selection vocabulary. So like the word splendid was one of my vocabulary words, so I could then take that lesson and I could teach ly, nes, er, and able. That is going to get me two things. First, it's going to help me meet the Common Core state standards. So it's something I need to add to the program because they didn't cover that. And then I also, just as evidence of good teaching, went ahead and used the selection vocabulary rather than giving the students other words to teach this point. So really, this program notes these program notes are going to help you in two ways. So they're going to help you when you need to write up the little narrative piece. That's your analysis, the way that you did for the best practice piece, that your analysis of how Common Core ready your program is. And then it's going to help you later on when you have to write your own unit at the end of the class, because you'll have some notes already on kind of what you were thinking about, ideas that you can use for lessons that are Common Core ready. All right, so now let me go back to my PowerPoint. Okay. Okay, so then after you go into your program and you analyze the lessons and activities for your strand of literacy, remember I was doing vocabulary, so you're going to do whatever yours is. Take those notes on how the program does or does not meet the Common Core standards. Like I said, this is going to be useful to you later on when you have to do the narrative piece and when you need to do your final project. And then we've got a second part of this template. So the second part is this Common Core State standards that aren't covered, right? So really every grade has some Common Core State standards that are new. So in other words, they're not reflected in the California English Language Arts Standards. And so you want to read these, see which apply to your area of literacy, and then you have to analyze the activities or opportunities in this unit that you could address some of these. So that was what that's what I could do. Hold on. Also right here. So I saw that, can I move this over? Okay. So I saw that related to vocabulary in third grade, students need to be able to do these two things too as part of the Common Core State Standards. So identify real-life connection between words and their use, and then be able to distinguish shades of meaning among related words that describe mind or states of mind or degree of certainty, and then acquire and use accurately grade-appropriate conversational, general academic, domain-specific words, phrases, including those that signal spatial and temporal relationships. So what I did was I looked at these standards and I went back into the program and I said, does this particular unit lend itself well to covering any of these? Because we know these weren't part of the standards in the past, but at some point I'm going to have to teach lessons that meet these standards. So I said, well, let me see if this unit will be a good time to do that. And I actually did find some opportunity here. And so I made two notes to myself. So the California English Language Arts Standard that touched on academic vocabulary for grade 3 was this. So demonstrate knowledge of levels of specificity. So it was kind of close. And so what I noticed was that on the day 3 lesson in my program for this this particular week, it addressed the relations part of that standard. So I thought it might not be necessary to teach this for the Common Core State Standards, and that I could use this time for another activity. The Common Core State Standards, the way that they talk about academic vocabulary was very different than how this program talked about academic vocabulary. And so the way that they talked about academic vocabulary was like the words and the phrases that the teacher was using during the instruction. So they were having the teacher point out that multiple meaning, compare and contrast, text structure, those are academic vocabulary words. And so I actually went into the program and I thought, well, in the text that the students are reading are words like hierarchy and exchange. So those would be much better, I thought, general academic vocabulary words, which is part of the Common Core State Standard that is not included in the California English Language Arts Standards that I need to cover. So that was an opportunity to teach to this standard. And then I noticed that since I probably didn't have to do this day 3 lesson, what I could do as an alternative, on page 86, there were really good examples for teaching temporal relationships. So the very first page of the story talked about the passage of time, and so they used words like after and then. And so I thought, okay, I can use that to help meet these this part of the standard. All right, I am going to run out of time here, so I am going to have to pick this up on a very short third screencast.